And we'll start by going around for a bit of introduction. Both for those of us here at Silver Springs Hotel and those of us who are online. In the meantime, please excuse the echo. Technicians must solve in the next couple of minutes. This is a public forum and we need to make sure our audio is very clear. So we'll start from that side. We want to take the next couple of minutes, just tell us who you are, where you're coming from, as we go around. Quick introductions, please.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Redress.
Morning, everyone. My name is Ona Nakoraje. I work with Up Energy, Uganda.
Good morning. My name is Bokenya Hakim, an ambassador inclusive market for energy efficiency, stock private sector.
Good morning, colleagues. My name is Ben Olon. Come from Etiana. Good morning, everyone. My name is Odong Emmanuel. I work for Corridvad Limited.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Sura Aoud. I'm working with the Energy Uganda Foundation.
Morning, everyone. My name is Mohammed Kadi. I'm the General Manager of Pharmaco Industries Limited. We have a 10,000 liter per day ethanol distillery, and we are into distribution of ethanol stores, and we are here to know what we can learn about the carbon credits. Thank you.
My name is Tashovia Crispus. I'm from the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development.
Thank you. We also joined with a number of people online, and I'll ask them to also quickly unmute the mic, and then they can also just introduce themselves as well. Then we'll get started in today's engagements.
Good morning. My name is Moses Ochieng. I am a carbon market associate at Vast Carbon. I support energy projects. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Rahma Faiz, an information design specialist at Vast Carbon. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ismail Muyinda, and I'm into modern clean cooking. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Trudy Modesta, CEO Cooking Basket. I work for Kwanza.
Musa? There, Agnes as well. Time. Somebody else has just joined us. Yes, please introduce yourself and then we'll get started.
Hello, this is Agnes Mokse from St. Henry's College Store. Thank you.
Based in Kigali, but we are soon opening up.
Ladies and gentlemen, Moses Moses Luvanga, my name is from Teda Farmer. We are working just with the briquettes.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Lily Rono from Vast Carbon Marketing and Communications. Thank you. I'll be taking a few photos during the event, and they are basically for purposes to showcase that this event really happened and that local stakeholders were engaged.
Thank you. At this point in time, I'd want to invite a representative from the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development, that is Dr. Crispas Tashobia, to give an opening remark for what is expected of today's engagements and the expectations from you in the audience here in person and those also virtually online. Again, just to reiterate, the session is being recorded and this will be publicly available via YouTube for anyone who wants to come and just quickly check what it is we have been talking about on matters of bioethanol cooking and the larger program of activities that the ministry is looking to deploy. That said, please let's welcome Dr. Crispas Tashobia.
Thank you, Vast Carbon team, Charles. Welcome to Kampala Stakeholder Engagement Meeting. Representative, we hope to have a representative maybe participating virtually from the British High Commission. We hope to have other government partners joining us. And we hope to have a commissioner from the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development. I will reserve some of the opening remarks so that once the commissioner comes in, then you would be able to give the opening remarks. But for now, dear stakeholders who have already arrived from the bioethanol sector, from different schools, and from the private sector of other activities, ladies and gentlemen, you are most welcome to this engagement. My name is Tashobia Crispas, as they introduced me. I am the carbon and green finance expert at the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development. And today we are here to present to you the program of activities that the ministry is designing. We understand that currently the clean cooking adoption in Uganda is still low. And this is one of the interventions that we are doing to ensure that we have high adoption in Uganda. Some of the few issues that are leading to that, one of them is a high upfront costs of the technologies being used in cooking. We have heard from schools who are here, they are using a lot of firewood currently in schools. And these are some of the interventions that we are putting in place to ensure that we reduce the high cost of the technologies being used. But again, we are here also to present to you that bioethanol is now here and it can be used in cooking for all kinds of cooking that you are in. We were here on 30th of March 2026, and specifically we were launching the program of activities which is looking at the 6 value chains that we came up with in Uganda. We came up with 1, the electric cooking. So anyone who is in the sector of electric cooking, we have a program of activity for you, which is a VPA for you. Anyone who is in bioethanol, which we are now consulting here about today, is part of the 6 value chain that we're talking about. We also have LPG, which we are going to be engaging you on still on Tuesday, 28th, next week. We now have biogas, which is also part of the interventions that we are using, which is also one of the 6 value chains that we are talking about. We have pellets and briquettes, and we also have finally bio, where so all of this for this value chain, and this program that we say can improve all value chain. So this carbon program that say is the first of its type in Africa. There's no like we are like this now it's how my for our this are many is discussed by but the during but I want to welcome this statement. The objective of this statement one is to present you the program, the vast capacity with in presentation of the program activities. We will also present how the VP practice which look at one, the private sector, specifically households, and the institutions, which looks at the government, also looking at both the households and institutions, which looks at involving partners and projects. Through that, we will also present to you how the DMRC, the digital monitoring reporting application, will be conducted and how it looks like. We'll take feedback from which we can integrate into what we are trying for us, what we are trying to do. So we want to decide what will work for you. So your inputs are very crucial today. So that what we are trying fits within that what you are expecting. So we have a lot of questions from you. We have a lot of questions from and answers. So that's what we are trying idea with apps around the now because of time to take us through as we for the commission to come give the opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. For what documents that have been shared, yes, see, what is a QR code for the document. Please second scan to see uh, one but when you call VPA Bioethanol, you see now some of the presentations you're having today, today's agenda, and also of we shall very have you lot comments that what you are scaling institution, you will we are to consider members what they can be clean by other will be having focus hope you're this is at the end of and there so last that pro yeah you, I hope you together who is number of by leverage to last is on in terms of QR code. There is a form for Google 7 1 you go the you'll see that have been and the okay so please make success from you, you might I don't know if think will be will be much it this is an is not but is so right you know there's a lot but more important to increase for and that is what is that the government and level beyond the but the real of the different you can within the and when I say meaning especially program that have set to reach for clean, but for first we must transition, and second we must the cook stop the vast and find some uh, so for us but also and what are the minister there is which we should come to. There's also several talking today we shall and then and of course all you have you can answer so in both today some uh and you can for long as well when you say that is the time and the look all those so for we shall what you call finance a number the real and all the if you want you don't have the minister and you shall on the standard that you must make the minister for doing. I hope that I know but the main if you want this is a this is a to receive how about and the provide to the and all part of how about The minister transition. The transition. This is the and those rich the role would simply require project are for those of such a where how many not only the site and this, to read bioethanol. Uh, those are on. I hope that's
cycle in Uganda. Cooking. We have seen ministers. We have seen different live cooking, live lemon. So we are doing all this to ensure that we trigger the demand of different customers, which will be able to give you an opportunity to sell your product. Thank you so much. I think there is a question after talking about the demand and supply.
Thank you for that presentation, Doctor. I have two questions. Basically. One is that this I find to be a very lack of a better word, strange, because I've never had government actually taking up carbon credits. So we would like you to explain, because what we are doing that's the private sector is that we get a consultant like VAST who would now do the POA for us. Now and then we pay them to do the service for us. Now what is government going to do, and are we going to pay you for these services, and how are we going to participate? And then also we are participating in the RPF UTOC program, where they already subsidizing our schools 20%. Now, that is a subsidy. Won't it be contradicting when you get carbon credits and then you're also subsidizing? Isn't that what they call double counting? So,
thank you. I will ask a few. Of course, the consultant will also answer a question. First and foremost, we understand that the carbon market space is volatile. That's number one. Number two, it is quite expensive to design carbon financing project, right? And we understand what happens in carbon market space. What the government has done already in March, we wrote the mechanism. The mechanism, you must have heard about the articles, the regulations that are going to create carbon markets in Uganda, right? Now, that already done to ensure that the carbon market space in Uganda is ready. That's the first thing. So you can say the road now is there on market, right? Number two, we understand very few developers from the private sector can afford designing a program. Maybe Pamako can be able to design. But my brother Gayas, they have a very big project. You may find that they are doing it. You may find that it is hard for them to design. But again, we understand for you to make sense of the carbon program, you need to generate a lot of right? So the only way to do it is to be able to have fragmented or projects come in book, right? So if all of it come to one, we generate as many as possible, so it makes sense for all of us. So we are saying, let's know as government, right? Once we carry the cost, we design one big program. You get? After designing one big program, we aggregate all of you into one program, but of course different technology. Under different technology, we generate many and we sell many, right? Then we also remove the big problem of the cost of developing carbon project. We need a lot of to design. That's one angle. The other is what? So okay, now since you are taking up, are we going to pay you? That is why we listen from you and tell you what we are deciding, right? And tell you how you will be able to join the program. Get the answer. You also have it, right? But for now, we are getting back, right? We'll be discussing about the benefits shared right in the day. These are all the presentation. I hope we'll be able to answer that.
But I you said that you're going to now there, and he has 10,000. Another so then you're how
The consultant will answer us. You will not get what is, you can't get what is not yours. Is it clear? What you think is what you get. But the good thing is that we now have, so it is who are going to buy. If you go to the market, you have one cow, and you are one cow in the market, and the other one comes with rolling in the market. Who gets many customers or potential buyers? The one with the lorry, because he has many cows on the truck. For you with one, but the consumption.
Okay, thank you. Is it a show? Okay, I'm here just to make because and I'm taking share. So key center energy we troubleshoot, we repair, we maintain all these compliance. So for is
Thank you so much. So to just quickly respond to the question of validation of is on what because the session today will plan, but be very clear because the sector, sector has issues of integrity over the last decade. The ministry is very keen to ensure that whatever claims they're going to be making, those claims are going to what you call verifiable. What do I mean? As a vendor or supplier of machines and fuel, the ministry, there are two objectives. The first objective is to make sure that the of are people using your cookstove fuel for cooking, for the clean cooking. Of course, like any business, the more people who are using cookstove and fuel, the better it is, correct? But for the purposes of carbon finance, selling your what is equal. Remember, at the beginning was under being, and then by giving, but the don't is one, then all and so for that can be swapped and that the ministry support the 360 how your then will also take your stove because all what you have done. I hope my point is very so I know sell your profit. But for the purpose of carbon finance, you must make sure that people are always Bioethanol and all this, and there'll be a platform if you're part of this program to support that monitoring process. The law will be explained now referable of the past, and the consequences some of these will be transacting in the national market by way of very neat, and that's why we'll be creating digital monitoring. Other point is very clear. We shall be looking at in that. I'm sure you guys here, especially know more about than anything else. We are looking at how we for about the house level, and the argument here is when you look at it's always about how can we ensure that if a house was using, let's say, 1 ton to prepare a specific weightage of food, and now you're transitioning them to ethanol cooking, it's not about increasing the amount of food being cooked. It is making sure that when you're comparing the baseline or the how people used to cook with the firewood, and now that you transition them to ethanol, they must be able to cook the same amount at the household additional level. The only thing changing fuel and the stove. That has to be there. I hope I make that point very clear. We are not going to reduce the amount of people for the school, for the learners, or we're not going to ask household cooking less. No. The household, the institution must be cooking the same amount of food when they're using fire, for example, and now they're using ethanol for cooking. Okay? Secondly, because we're looking at this from a carbon finance perspective, it's about emissions reduction. Now, it is very easy to make a quick calculation or even just a guess that ethanol has less emissions compared to firewood. But I'll pose to the audience. Can you transition a school or a house that is already cooking with electricity to ethanol and still get your benefits? Will there be sense? Microphone here? In the case of Uganda,
is
okay.
So,
He says that in the case of Uganda, hydroelectric, and therefore you can't create because ethanol has no emission. Any other opinion? In the business of finance, it's about what are you? What are you? The amount of emission is quite matters. Electricity, because the Uganda is relatively clean, it's not as much as by ethanol. So if a household or school is already cooking and you're giving them ethanol, will there be a discrepancy or the benefits, right? So don't expect the effect. So if you're looking at carbon finance from a ethanol perspective, it's very important to keep in mind who are you transitioning, or what are you teaching the household from. If you're transitioning from firewood, very good case, then it makes sense. Right, together. If you're transitioning from LPG or electricity, especially LPG, maybe very visible. So you should also be targeting who are your intended customers or beneficiaries within the country. I know that in Kampala, most of houses are very transition to cooking on LPG, so maybe there may be the houses targeting with those outside the area. The key thing here for finance is what really are you displacing? Now, the carbon finance methodologies that we talk about today also value chain. Remember, in as much as ethanol is filed as its storage of emission, what is the source of the ethanol in terms of the chain? Because we are burning the ethanol, there are those emissions associated with it. Now, previously, we didn't really care much about the emissions for the manufacturing of ethanol, but the methodologies the industry now see as much as possible emissions reduction from the fuel switch and the efficiency, improvement in efficiency. But that's all most likely there are some emissions counted for, there are some emissions generated during the manufacturing process that is also going to be accounted for. More importantly, where is the ethanol coming from and where it's going? Let's say, politically speaking, ethanol is generated in Kampala, but your household is, let's say, in Gulu. Yes? And you're going to transport them. And I made to see an ethanol truck. I'm sure most of the trucks are doing the transportation of the sale of petrol. So the emissions on account of the transportation of the fuel to the houses emissions will also be accounted for in our calculations. And we shall be seeing from our calculations what are we seeing typically at some of the carbon-based units. So it's very important that even when we're looking at doing transition, we try and make sure the transition in the entire ecosystem, the entire value chain is as clean as possible. I'm not comparing anyone to EVs, electric vehicles, for transport the ethanol. I'm just saying those considerations, those calculations of emissions will be taken into account. I hope I'm clear on that. We should be looking at the calculations later in the day. I will not talk about the health benefits. I'm sure you guys know more about the health benefits. I'll just talk about what has been known, some of the health of the use of, let's say, firewood or other heavy stools or kitchen. We always see that kitchens use firewood or stools. The walls that and what's the black paint or what is it? It's a soot, the black carbon. And if you can see on the walls, you may not see the lands perfectly also in the lands. So some of the stories we want to start changing before and the ministry is very keen on this issue. Now, I will not try and attempt to speak about how to sell ethanol, fuel, numbers, my numbers, I'm sure they're testable. Definitely, ethanol fuel is way cheaper than charcoal or fire. Look from annual perspective. That's definitely yes. But now, when it comes to the household, you must find the most appropriate way to sell your business, to sell the story. The health is very clear, but you also need to give a comparison. I'm sure that several vendors of ethanol stocks, you need to present a comparison of the household. Because the household cannot be convinced about your product and the economics of it. Then the moment you do the household, so that the transition happens. And remember, selling the stove only helps you in meeting the first line, which is selling your product. But if you're coming into the world of credits, stove must be used. And it must be used again in this case with the ethanol. And we're going to be able to do the assessment during the monitoring report to see how many credits are generated or what is the emissions reduction amount of stove in every single household or institution. All that point is very clear. Yeah, I don't want to deliberate too much. Of course, wondering there will be different ethanol stove, which also won't be part of this conversation. How to ensure the standard now? The Ministry of Energy is an island works with different agencies, so you can be very much assured that you invest in providing such guidelines, minimum technical requirements and thermal efficiency, emissions reduction, waste management from solid stoves to the ministry. If you as a vendor or a supplier would begin to be part of the voluntary process activity for the ethanol, you must meet your standards so you can be part of the ministry's program. You might be wondering, are we saying then that individuals cannot be part of the ministry's program If you want to do your own carbon project in the Republic of Uganda, you're more than welcome. But what you're saying, the specific benefits that this program is providing for those who are going to be part of the program activities that is being managed by the ministry. And there are quite a number of benefits, including supporting setting up a couple of projects that the community ourselves will be supporting in doing so, things to do with baseline things, special projects at the international standard as well. Some of the benefits you're getting. If you feel that you're able to do this, then maybe the program is not for you, but for those who want to leverage all these system building, the technicians, capacity building, the developers as well, from a perspective, that's why we're here today to say these are some of the benefits of joining the program. The conditions being must be in compliance with minimum standards and guidelines that will be provided by the Ministry of Energy and Development. If you have any questions, just having those sessions take them. And as well, it's not just like in the household, but we're also looking at professional. For decades, we've always been focused on house cooking. Now, what the ministry is saying is enough to show that there's a huge gap in the institutions, especially schools, and the ministry is also very keen to make sure that these benefits are passed on to the schools as well. I've spoken quite a bit about monitoring, how we are able to monitor that. Because really, about credits is really think about like simply talking about quantifying air, selling air quantities. But when you're coming to what's called carbon accounting, in particular case, we tend to use the gold standard as the international testing program to support this initiative. And thankfully, sometime in December last year, they have moved towards updating, enhancing the robustness of what you call the carbon accounting methodologies. There's a way within which we're able to see how much air being produced by a three-stone stove running firewood, and there's a way in which you're able to see how much emissions are produced by the ethanol stove. We've got simple air quality measures for that. Now, I talked about monitoring. I talked about being able to verify the steps. So for the purposes of this engagement, there are three possible accounting methodologies available for use. And how to use or which one will be most applicable is something that we have in the technical capability of the different vendors, getting the feasibility. But with two conditions. The first condition or the first question would be, are those ethanol stoves able to be metered? Like how as a sort of sensor that can assess the amount of ethanol being consumed. It has become very easy, especially with the use of PG stoves and also PG stoves testing how much volume is used. The electric stoves, how much electricity is consumed. There are some stores being worked on to have something similar. But not all stores are able to do that. So what the alternative is, the alternative has been, or the alternative is that we'll have to rely on the cell. At the institutional level, a school has decided to adopt an ethanol stove for very good. One, of course, the sort of cell showed by the stove. That is easy. And for the use of ethanol, they also must be verifiable cells. You know what I mean? It's not those cells we buy in the ocean, but the one who have a commitment, committal to nothing should be assumed that any exemptions to participating in this government project, any dues you have, any other government agencies must always be done. I hope you understand. So the only way we can verify was able to obtain this amount of ethanol is if those certain receipts that have verifiable to show that they actually purchased or acquired this ethanol from certain. In the case of households, something similar will this case, from the side of the vendor to see how much volume of this has been sold to the stores that have been registered in this program. Together, that is where you cannot use stores. The alternative is how can you verifiable sales. A question that you might have is, what if my business has been doing this business of ethanol stoves and fuels to schools households for the last couple of years? That is good. You could potentially have the potential. Why do I say this? You require one. Do you have those? Yes. And I think it's two. We cannot go as far back to, let's say, because again, we have questions on going very well. So those are some of the small technical conversations that you have with businesses who will be looking at this program. If you have got the sales record and other conditionalities, you can see how much those previous stores can be part of the program. But you can't go beyond the technical reasons which shall give the explanations to those individual companies. You might worry what about how should I going to get a letter of authorization for Article 6? That's why now by this program, this is to make sure guidelines, then the ministry working hand in hand with you to make sure all those things are going to be done in order. Be it out of protection, the letter of approval, and those are to compliance market interaction, the so-called information. That's not the benefits of being part of the program. We shall have technical support to so in conclusion, technology are available. We shall get into the nitty on a separate session for those companies who will be looking at leveraging the purposes of the specific standards using to ensure that things are done in the correct manner. To keep things simple, if a vendor, for example, if I not vendor to ethanol might also be maybe LSC or something else. But to keep things simple from an accounting perspective, we shall register the full-time project activities buckets depending on the fuel. So, for example, if energy has solves in electric for schools and biogas, G shall treat those three different buckets for different projects because that's how we can show everything and simple to do the. Okay, so if you have got multiple fuels, multiple kind of stoves, that's how we're looking to develop a particular component. Of course, we shall be working hand in hand. Now, like in each project, because voluntary activities is under the project. Let me just go back to make sure we are all the same picture. Remember, there's a program of activities for the Uganda National Fuel Program that is accepting multiple fuels. So let's say electric cooking. Now, if you're going to be going into ethanol as well, the one for electric cooking will be registered separately, and the one for ethanol will be registered separately, so forth and so forth. This is the process of making sure the carbon accounting is very simple, it's very clear, easy to track. So don't feel excluded. If you are looking at the fuel, we can still take today's conversation on ethanol, will be covering on Tuesday. Electric cooking was covered on Monday. Zulu Valley. We're here for ethanol. It's about farmers and about that to Barara. Us. So today just focus. So no fuel is being excluded. The thing is we separate different fuels with different markets in terms of the process of accounting. I hope the point is clear to all. And I insist again, we'll have other standards and requirements. Let me not say qualifications, but what we call inclusion area for the different vendors of vendors begin to be part of this engagement. Before I proceed, because it's not a lecture, it's a presentation, any comments, questions with respect to what I've got so far?
My question is around if I supply but I don't supply, who gets the car?
Thank you.
You mentioned there's something about when you make the store, there must be verifiable sales record. Now, those verifiable sales record in the sale of the store is you are ready or something like that. Now, when you're selling fuel, must you also have verifiable sales records, or you have records that the store, the fuel was bought by customer sitting on that place, blah, blah, blah. Then mention something about takeaway. You, I don't know, because we invest in the sector, and we just had what happened in Kenya, largest just from 100 and zero overnight. Can you tell me, Daktari, that companies in this space will not such position?
Thank you.
I am going to give one for you. Letter of LOA, just that one answer. What happened if supply not that one, just answer. But I just want to give assurance and idea of my brother. First and foremost, in this arrangement, you are a partner, right? But in the beginning, early last year, the government launched mechanism, which I call regulation, right? That are guiding the how the game is going to be played in it, right? That's said and done. The rules are very simple, and they are within the regulation. So the design of this program is also as the regulations that are available, right? I don't want to talk much about the companies that you mentioned and the country that you mentioned, but the issue is related to compliance, right? The issue with company registration is related to compliance. If the rules of the game are clear and you don't meet them, what happens? You are disqualified. So the company was disqualified simply it did not meet the rules of the game, right? Here we say now the rules of the game are clear. First, we want you to have come and participate in the program. We are solving you, right? So that alone is a reason that for you, you are better off. But again, from the other side, was driving the problem. Here in the government program, you get it. So you are sure that that's answers that.
Yes, that's support the that those platforms to express interest in industry, and also if that brings the well, but to be very clear, when we pass some of the fears, we will not be able to so things yes. Now, question on sales. So for the school, that is very easy because you are about this ultimately those now the health help the first record is a record to whom have school a part of this product you are selling around stock to 10,000 households, make sure we know or reflect who are these people, location, etc. one. And then we are working as there's a way in which those let's say selling salt level, guys have to go to a fuel station, a shop, go to fuel depot. So how much is being discharged from that fuel depot? That kind of a record is very, very important. And of course, the corresponding sales record to support the sales volume at the depot. The whole idea is any mechanism that can support verifying ethanol was used as a fuel for cooking, plus the corresponding stove what's really cases where we cannot the digital parties depending on how the stove is going to happen. But what is important, can we have the host? Can we have how to sell the volume, sell volume plus proof that actually ethanol is sold? The other interesting question, can you get credits with fuel and not stove? So this is the hashtag. What is the carbon offset? What is really the thing that is driving emissions reduction? It's on the energy efficiency of the stove. But the stove by itself is a fuel, and the fuel is also efficient. So really, selling the fuel of the stove is good, and everyone is thankful for that. But for the carbon, you won't get directly to the in the case of the one of the stove. But there's something here we're talking about ensuring transition and sustainable. There's the government is putting the for this program. There's a household is also sure that consuming your fuel and using your products and forgetting anybody else. And then let's say you're the fuel provider, let's say it's a provider, but fuel, and then there's a fuel. There are like 4 or 5 different parties. For this program, you have to see when this benefit called how can we ensure all are incentivized transitioning. If you are to do a company itself, let's say providing ethanol stock, usually the case yours how you can to the houses. We'll be talking about beneficiaries. But technically speaking, usually but for this program, we have to see how can we push the transition for other fuels intervention. How can we where is the ethanol? The sugar again. We can do something for them. Otherwise, they'll just say you will support if you want. So how do you ensure that supply chain the raw material also grants? Last thing you want is spend millions of shillings and cooking, and then you give some farmer say, oh, money, and you didn't come and then never. So you have to make sure the entire value chain, is looking part of the work here is that those conversational numbers and share have to come into action. Apart from what's called the benefits or be part of the program. They're doing carbon transport to see when we're getting $20 how are you sure $20 being split in a reasonable manner? It's not just and that's why I said those commercial conversations that should have the ministry. So those questions. So I'll put this to yes. And that's, yes.
So route ethanol or LPG. Where the carbon would I have more carbon credits because from the side it's a renewable fuel. It also has its additional benefits. For the case of Uganda, if the ethanol is being produced from cassava or sugar, foods, etc. So it benefits. It has a number of SDGs that that it can take that checklist. So the question is, would I get a higher, percentage or higher carbon credits if I took the ethanol as a supplier of ethanol, who is now supplying a carbon credit who has the stock? Should I then also demand more because these are more premium carbon credits?
Thank you. That's a very, very good question. Hope you have understood. Yeah. Which is simply coming, but this environment is coming from a certain system will be empowering the farmers. So the answer will come in two sides. There's the answer with respect to which one consume some better value for why, which one gives you more in terms of the science and the formulation. Also, another answer with respect to the source of fuel. So number one, from the description, it's quite evident that getting ethanol from the agricultural sector has got more benefits. There's more what's called G, this is something G, and that is on that basis, then like get better pricing for credits coming from of the co-benefit store. Are you together? Second response of the two fuels, which is more efficient compared to this was I think the caloric value is better. Maybe not the ethanol is better than okay. Let's go that. But I think LPG got efficiency. Remember the it's about a lot of emissions to drive about emission reduction. And if the LPG stove is more efficient than ethanol stove, it's likely to give you more carbon credits. Yeah? So that case, I think getting more displacement of LPG stove has got higher emissions than ethanol stove, and of course the fuel itself. The time response is remember about the issue of upstream, downstream emissions. What is the case for ethanol? What is the case for LPG? Ethanol is being, let's say, generated or being produced in Kampala, and then you're taking it to a couple of many kilometers, very many kilometers. Yeah, we have to subtract that. Is that the same case for LPG? So remember, we have to do all the subtraction. What is the emissions associated to upstream getting the raw material, the ethanol, against all G, and then the downstream sending or transporting the fuel to the houses to use. I can assume the case of where I come from, there's a better distribution of LPG than in where I'm not the case here. But you'll have to see the downstream emission from the point of source, where it's generated, generated, taken to capture. Then you'll have that response to which of these two or two programs should a business choose one over the other? That's a question I won't answer that. But for me, I'm going to go back to my keyboard philosophy. Remember, I talked about the methodologies. Yeah, it may come from simple mathematics, not mathematics. We have methodologies. Depending on which methodology you pick, actually, you can have one store for ethanol. Use this methodology to get because some extra data, but they're all very fast. So we'll still have to calculate the different ones to see how many credits can we get from this stove being distributed in this house, let's say, and calculate same thing for LPG and everything else. So the actual numbers will come from individual program. Maybe Farmco is having the percent in Zulu, everything is done in Zulu, and therefore the most safe, because if it's done in Zulu, then the file information will be done. So it all depends on the different nuances that you have to get different benefits. But in terms of usually it puts more value for the credit, the economic because of the story of the agricultural value chain, which oil and gas. There's a lot of sentiment for that. I hope you're
that has established who are developing there's a lot of fits and upholstery on stock, food security, etc. So and I imagine that there are new mechanisms and new that needs to be more stringent, tell a better story. How does the association again and the impact would how would you advise, because in Uganda we are promoting a lot, again recognizing our problem is surplus, in some cases we're having surplus maize and unutilized land, so we are seeing this opportunity to then add value to the land and also improve productivity. But to the world out there, when they see somebody is producing cassava, ethanol from cassava, the first thing is food security, yet it's a context specific situation. For us, we are not suffering food security. So European countries, for instance, where the you think the design again it into consideration. That's something that remedies.
Thank you. Actually, one of the methodologies, clear one, has some of the so the response is in two ways. Any carbon project being developed is the concept of no net harm on the community. That's number one. When you're doing now what you call the VPA design document, let's say for Farmco wants to do the bioethanol, you'll be having your own VPA design document, for example. Within the design document, if you're using especially the last two methodologies, the technology and practice displays energy consumption or VPA methodology, will need to be very clear and get where it is the source of the energy. And within it, we have to justify or indicate that we are not triggering net system, especially in this case, food security, whatever. Madam has mentioned that there's a case of food surplus in the country. I'm sure there's a legal document that speaks to that. That's what was reporting in the design document. It says we're using cassava and we're not having any impact on the food value chain because if you look at this data, the demand for cassava in the province of Uganda is this amount, and this is the amount we're actually producing. And the amount that you require per annum is this amount. You're using surplus. So that mathematical calculation has to be done, and that data, the study, has to be caught in the design document. That is our language. Okay, that's how we're able to respond to. If you're using the ethanol, how are you making sure you're not harming or presenting against security for a region or a country at large? Microphone.
What the ethanol has contributed and that doesn't come surplus
So along the study speak to the amount of cassava produced is within the surplus for that particular country. It should be okay. The only problem will be cases whereby you are failing or forcing farmers to change their food crop to yours, that because the auditor may flag that as and potential net harm. Okay, if somebody was just thinking, let's say that you 20 hectares, and then sell a story, you are both doing the right thing, but you may to supply into the case and if they're going to be subtracting that because of you, then there could be a case of potential harm. So probably not have them transition themselves from let's say next to cassava, but a portion. But I'll be very careful to make sure that we see the net harm not just for one particular value chain, it's for other value chains. The farmer might have a contract with another same skilled for or cassava or whatever it is. You shouldn't have that value chain just to promote your value chain in the name of cooking. Together, we shouldn't go about the forest in the name of having cassava field or that's a net harm. Would a separate the importation of ethanol? I don't know. But net harm is very important for us to I hope you're together. I think that comes down to when you're looking to set up a business in Uganda, do you have a steady supply chain for your answer is not there. Maybe it's not the right. Okay, so thinking through that is very important because carbon standard registry is very good for that. And because remember, getting carbon credits generated is one thing. Getting some by them, that's where now how do you come about that story? Yeah? First thing one is the certificate storage attached to your because then that's the price, not your offer. I hope the next part of the conversation, we're all trying to see how can we scale the use of ethanol for clean cooking, be it at the household level or the national level. Another question? We all go? Okay. Before the tea break, we pause there for tea break for just 15 minutes. Then we come back from 15, go all the way to 1 p.m. and return to ethanol. But for the break, here, maybe pause before we for the purposes of officials, those are to be part of this program, at least you know the or pass on to. Thank you.
Apologies. I during readings from the commissioner who was able to join, however, he blessed and is very eager to see outcomes of this development. We take we really want to prioritize developing carbon markets for because where we see access shipments and growth, it's being difficult. Carbon finance is actually driving that market, is driving and motivating private sector to come and establish. So as a role in industry, we want to see how we can navigate, break the barriers that have been, preventing other potential companies from being in the carbon sector. Some of the barriers have been the higher upfront cost of the design of carbon technology and the technical expertise as you can relate. I'm sure all of us are learning a lot of things regarding what needs to be done to develop, to design a carbon project. We've really scratching the surface. So we recognize that that is a big barrier in order to go and be able to access and have that full transition where we want to go to within the shortest time possible before 2040. We want to, again, we are supporting intervention, design it, and then enable the private sector to play. Another key what also motivates us to implement certain intervention, break down the policy stories, which we have seen in other countries like Europe is also advanced. When it's time to do the clearance project, do the water sampling and qualification, I believe having this clause to what's happening can really de-risk that intervention and maybe speed up the process of having these credits or authorized, issued, and all those processes that have to happen. So in doing this, we hope that we can have a national program that can enable each and every player to participate, because we've seen where when also access carbon credits when they participate, the market is, can have selling prices slightly better. They have enough resources to do technology innovation, develop better iterations of these technologies, but also have markets. They now get to scale up. But we've also seen where carbon credits are being implemented, the benefits that are going to actual beneficiaries, the users of these technologies, also motivates them to use it. We've also seen for those who are not participating, the prices are different. So there tends to be a bit of market distortion. It's one of the reasons why we have something that's holistic enough to have each and every player participate. So as scientists, we look forward to your very transparent, candid feedback. Tell us what we do, design this data so that each and every person can participate in it, and ultimately shall have an environment that enable us to achieve universal inclusive access in the shortest time possible. So with those few remarks, I wish you very good preparations, and I hope, and I know for sure that the shortest time possible, I don't know for how long, we hope to have a carbon project with just I know it's before June. Fingers crossed. So yes, thank you very much, and you're welcome. Break tea.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to proceed the session. And make sure we try and come to a conclusion by around 1 p.m. And I hope those online, you can hear me. If you can hear me, just give me a thumbs up. If you can hear me online, just give me a thumbs up. If you can hear me online, just give me a thumbs up. Thank you. Also, if you can see what I'm presenting online, just as well, give me a thumbs up. If you're online and you can see my presentation, give me a thumbs up. Thank you. So from morning, we are very clear. Yeah, just leave everything like that. Don't touch anything. So we are going to proceed in the discussion. Like I mentioned earlier, we are focusing on two main beneficiaries or targeted end users. Of course, there's a case of the households and there's a case of the institutions. And when we talked about institutions, we are focusing be it schools, health facilities, health centers, correctional facilities, any institution that has a need for clean cooking are under consideration, including but not limited to the refugee settlements. We all know that there are a number of initiatives ongoing within the refugee settlements, so that is also under consideration. And of course, the households. We have well over 10 million households in the country, and therefore we're asking for those who are really keen on supporting the transition to come and work with the government, in this case for the case of bioethanol, clean cooking. And I don't know if there's any question on that, on the targeted households. I think we're clear. The key thing there is for the suppliers and the vendors to make sure we're able to monitor the people, the houses and the institutions that are taking your stoves, as well as the consumption for the fuel. That's very, very important. Earlier, I touched briefly on what we call the need to ensure there are co-benefits. And in this case, we need to ensure that we are contributing to the sustainable development goals, SDGs. And we'll just quickly look at some of them and how we are looking at the framework. We all know that by simply focusing on the emission reduction, we are of course going to be able to tackle SDG 13 on climate action. But that's not enough, because we have to make sure that for us to do a successful carbon project, we need to do more than just one SDG goal. We need to have at least 3 co-benefits. So to the partners who will be working with the ministry, we already have in mind some of the SDG goals that we want to focus on, and these are some of them. But the key thing here is this: when it comes to carbon projects, merely mentioning that a project or your project is tackling one of the SDGs is not enough. One has to go the extra mile and show the proof. And I'm just going to talk about briefly on how some projects are able to show the proof. So as you are considering to be part of the program, I know Pharmaco is interested, and others, we're able to see how exactly can we quantify. How we quantify achievement of climate action is fairly simple, using either one of the methodologies we spoke about earlier on emissions reduction and calculating that. And once you have those numbers, that will be speaking to SDG 13 on climate action. Next, the question is, are we sure that the fuel, that is the ethanol fuel and the stove, are going to be providing access to affordable and clean energy? So in this case here, it will be a question of what is the price point in comparison to what you're displacing? And that's what I talked about earlier in the day, that for the vendors, for the suppliers, we need to do the documentation. What's the cost of charcoal or firewood to a typical household in the respective districts against yours? And how many households can we say have now gotten the transition? So one household, 2 households, 1,000 households. We document that, then we can easily talk about the project having attained SDG number 7 on affordable and clean energy. We also talked about in the morning that when you go to some of these houses and institutional kitchens that are using charcoal or firewood, there's a case of a mysteriously looking black paint. So are we able to document that post-transition, there's a documented case whereby in the case of institutions, there are far less people falling ill because of respiratory issues or even the houses. So we'll be working very closely again with the different suppliers of these stoves to be able to document some of these narratives. Are we seeing reduced cases in the institutions? Are we seeing reduced cases also from the households? If we can't document the facts, then we can never make a claim to one of the SDGs. So it's very, very important. Earlier, I talked about the importance for gender equality in programs. The question will be, is there any way within which we can talk about your program, making sure there's improvement or sustained gender equality by way of either employment or otherwise? If so, we can then leverage that as one of the potential SDGs or co-benefits to the program. What's very important is not merely stating, but also making sure we're able to catalog the evidence to support that. To be very particular, the gold standard has what you call the SDG impact tool that requires the developers to work with the implementers to document these facts, whether or not somebody is able to document something else. But if you can't document a particular SDG benefits, then we cannot leverage that as a particular goal. Because we're also talking about the fact that we are looking to release the impact on forest cover, then we are able to actually document. We have done projects whereby we've been able to document, should school transition to electric cooking, how much firewood have been saved, and then we work backwards. The amount of firewood in terms of tonnage, how many trees are going to be saved. So if you transition institutions, institutions and households that from the baseline were using firewood, we can easily compute and see how much forest cover has been saved on account of transitioning to bioethanol cooking. Last but not least is a very important one. I don't know how many people are currently under FAMCO's engagement, but I know as you're transitioning, there'll be more employment, benefits or more employment being created because of such kind of transition. Being able to document all these proofs will allow the developer ourselves and you, the implementing partner, to make a claim that the introduction of the FAMCO ethanol stove was able to provide decent work and increase the employment within a particular region. So that's very, very important for us to document. Documenting how many trees have been saved because transition is important. Documenting how many jobs have been created from the transition is equally important, as much as documenting the reduced number of cases for respiratory health issues, as well as how many households have been able to acquire the ethanol stove and also the fuel, so you can make a claim to SDG number 7. Documentation is very important because if you don't document, we can't make the claim. And as I mentioned earlier, all this information will be required to be validated by what you call third-party auditors. Okay, the same way even banks make financial statement but have to undergo an audit. Same case for carbon projects, they have to go undergo a third-party independent audit, and therefore documentation and storage of this information will be very, very important. Any question pertaining to co-benefits and SDG goals and contributions? Questions or comments? Remember, please, on your table, there is a form labeled Stakeholder Comments form. Feel free to just make those comments and narratives. If you feel don't want to get the mic, please make sure you're always documenting it the same. Alternatively, there's also a QR code that will take you to an online form, which can also give us your comments, questions, and reservations.
Thank you very much, Charles. One of the things that we see when we are transitioning from
firewood, especially institutional cookings, institutional cooking where predominantly the fuel was firewood, now we are switching to an alternative.
We normally find
very interesting cases where there are people who are deriving a livelihood from splitting the firewood, loading the firewood into the appliance. Now, because we've provided an efficient and more convenient appliance, they don't have jobs anymore, and they bring that up and they, as a grievance. And so, how can we then, design such interventions to ensure that we invest to benefit?
Anyone else? Question, comments? Maybe if I can give my quick response, I want to put Mohammed on the spot to tell us how they're looking to also do that, because I'm sure you'll be introducing the stoves to parts of the country where there's a very thriving charcoal business. And you're putting people out of jobs like some president somewhere else. So how are you going to respond to that?
Actually, you'll find that if you go to especially Kampala, people are using charcoal as the main cooking fuel. The charcoal dealer has a huge network of people who get their charcoal. These are the same people who can be converted, become distributors of fuel. The only thing that they have to do is training safety issues of ethanol and how to store it. But again, once you take away the charcoal from them, we reintroduce new product that can distribute. And what we realized, tried at one of the places, that even the young regular customers, once they see you, the regular customer trust them. So that now this is a new technology, and this is what we can sell. The conversion rate. So one thing is that if stop selling charcoal, that's powerful.
Thank you. I hope those are online are following keenly as well. Although I can see their cases of echo online. Any other question or comment?
Thank you very much. As regards to material, that's sugar cane. I remember I'm from Uganda. I'm a Sogiri. But we suffered a lot during the season of what? Sugar cane growing. The prices dropped, and the people started cutting sugar cane plantations desperately. But when this thing comes out, it's as if it's a business need. And again, it's trying to persuade the Basoka to go to sugar cane growing. They will look at you as what a traitor. And moreover, there is a business sense, but they will look at you as a traitor. I don't know how the government will persuade the Basoka to go back to sugar cane growing. I wonder how the government will persuade them. I don't know. But government people, you are bad. But we are deprived of what? Autonomy, what? Gains. And we are beaten because of the prices. So we need to go down and tell people sugarcane is now what? A material which we can use to what? To do the cooking instead of the businesses of sugarcane. What of sugar? Apart from sugar, this is now a business.
I want us to give a farmer. How are you working with farmers who to best answer that before we start?
The best thing to do is right now you find farmers already have what they are working on. Now what we do is that we come contract the farmer, you as a farmer, and tell you that we are going to grow this amount of say sugarcane, server of feedstock at a certain price, so that you are 100% sure that when I harvest, we have a contract of like or your feedstock. And that's one thing that even now once we have a contract, banks are now willing to come to some loan because they know 100% that once you harvest your feedstock, it is going to be bought. So the idea is to liaise with the with us people to be able to partner with the farmers. And then now government can work in very easily through the agricultural officers who give advice to the farmers and also stand in to make sure that that deal between the farmer and the producer is a fair deal, so that they are not exploited. The price that they get is a reasonable price. Thank you.
I think that is one way of how we can leverage on partnerships, especially partnering with the ethanol manufacturers or producers to ensure that there is that kind of arrangement and you're able to now get assurance through contract signing, because at least now you're assured that maybe for the next this kind of period of time your sugar cane is going to be purchased. I don't know, I want to give maybe Justine also, in your own perspective, in relation to, because Busoga, accordingly, people are saying no more to planting sugar cane, simply because when we had sugar cane, price was an issue. We rather start growing matoke, start growing any other food crop, not sugar. Please, maybe if you, in your own perspective.
Yes, thank you very much for that very valid question that you've asked. And indeed, that is one of the things that drove us to have a biofuels market, because the sugarcane, even the price of sugarcane was tied to the sugar markets. So when there was a dip in the sugar markets, or when there were changes and fluctuations, it affected the sugar markets, the sugarcane market. So it is one of the reasons as to why we are pushing for biofuels. And these biofuels, as you're aware, I'm sure you're aware, sir, we are not only using it, we are not only promoting the biofuels for cooking, we are also promoting biofuels for blending. And to date, in Uganda, we're having a 1% blend of biofuels. If you're using petrol today, you need to know that 1% of the petrol that you're buying, 1% of it has bioethanol in it. Are you aware of that? Okay, well, we publish that information in the newspapers and in our Uganda Gazette. So, and the intention, and actually we see an opportunity even with this crisis. If we had sufficient sugarcane supply, this crisis where we're having, again, the delayed, what's going on internationally, would have created an opportunity for us to grow our blending ratio. Our law requires that we blend biofuels up to 20%. But the reason as to why we are not able to meet that target today is we cannot guarantee that we have enough bioethanol in Uganda to give us that 20% target. So we started with a comfortable 1%, and we want to aggressively push it to 5%. And taking note of the historical issues that have happened regarding sugarcane growing, not only in Busoga but even the Bunyoro region, we are working with the Ministry of Trade to also increase awareness, sensitize, and address those barriers aimed at encouraging the public, the farmers, to go back into growing sugarcane. And here we want to, even when we look at producing biofuels from sugarcane, you can take it into a sugar mill, extract molasses, and then produce the ethanol. Or else, you can just squeeze the juice and take it straight into the ethanol. So now that creates another, you can have a standalone distillery that doesn't have to go through a sugar mill. I think one factory that is doing that is Smart Distilleries in Bunyoro. So it's right now, as we are in the past, when there was only a market for sugar, we are now seeing that there is also a market for ethanol, and that will also support in stabilizing the market prices for sugarcane. And with that, we expect that we'll have more farmers that are participating in this market. So I hope that answers your question. But we are working very closely, even with the Kingdom of Busoga, to do that sensitization and mobilization. And with Ministry of Trade, we are working with, we actually want to mobilize financing for cooperatives so that they can support you to then produce this sugarcane. Thank you.
It's clear that there are lots of interventions that are being put there. And I buy your appeal that I think the government needs to do even more to ensure that our people, and I'm happy you are representing your people and saying, please, we need to come back into sugarcane growing. And now, as you can see, there's need. We need to blend the fuel by what? 20%. But we are, where are we? Only 1%. So tell them, please, now the market is here. If you can be able to produce what can go, the remaining 19, if it can come from Busoga region, then it will be a big opportunity. Please, take the message.
Thank you. Moving on, given that we are now very well aligned on some of the SDG goals, we also have to review what are some of the expected safeguarding principles that the project is very keen on. Now remember, when you're doing any carbon project, there should never be a case of net harm on the environment or ecosystem. Same applies to the communities that you're looking to promote. More importantly, when you're looking at leveraging the gold standard as one of the SD principle marketing program you are relying on, there are certain principles that you have to make sure that are adhered to by all parties, including the institutions or the partners who are looking to provide us the institutional stalls and do the marketing and distribution. I've talked quite intently on the rights to the important for us to make sure we promote human rights, and there'll be no cases of infringement of human rights. We cannot compel or force people to transition into cooking with ethanol. It has to be a matter of conviction. So to the suppliers, ours will be asking you to make sure you find the right means and ways of promoting your fuel without infringing any human rights. Where there's an opportunity to empower the women, it will be greatly welcome as well, because it's part of the principles of ensuring there's gender equality and women's empowerment. It's also very important to make sure that for the communities, the stalls you're providing them, there's no net emissions. So you're not saying we are replacing firewood and tree and providing them with ethanol, and there's more consequence on the health, be it from the fuel, during cooking, handling or managing, and also disposal of electronic waste, or rather the metal waste, when it comes to its end of lifespan. So it's important we also keep that in mind. It's also equally important we protect the cultural heritage and promote the lives and livelihoods of indigenous people. I like the comment about promoting a particular community to be incentivized and encouraged to go back to sugarcane farming. What's very important is to make sure that anything we are doing, we're ensuring that the communities or the cultural practices are not being impacted negatively by the project. I did mention earlier in the morning that you are not exempt from other legal or financial obligations by partnering with the ministry to do this project. So, for example, if you are going to be importing these stoves for the ethanol stove, make sure you do all your dues. There are no cutting corners. If we are talking about verifiable sales receipt, make sure you're getting verifiable sales receipt and are not engaging in any funny business, particularly the ones pertaining to corruption in the process of executing your mandates. We should also be very keen to make sure we are demonstrating and documenting all the economic impacts that the project is going to be having. So be it improving the fuel itself. It's also very important. Lastly, I'll talk about the issue of land use. There's a question of how do we ensure that there's no net harm. So deforesting forests in the name of setting up a cassava plantation is not really admirable, especially if the forest is indigenous, okay? There should be no net harm on any forest ecosystem. Any questions or comments on that before I talk about carbon rights and benefit sharing? Questions and comments on that? Okay, please again, just to reiterate for the nth time, there's a form, the stakeholder form. You can give us your written feedback or click the link or the QR code that takes you to the online link and give us your comments on the same. We are approaching the tail end of today's conversation, and what's one very important component is the matters of carbon rights and benefit sharing. So I'm going to be very direct and very forward in terms of who owns the carbon rights, but more importantly, how can we create an enabling environment or an ecosystem where people are able to share the carbon rights. But what does the regulation say? The climate change mechanisms 2025 that have been published and gazetted by the government are very clear. If you go to Regulation 18 or Clause 18, it speaks on a benefit sharing plan that is required for every carbon project in the country. Clean cooking notwithstanding, you partnering with the ministry notwithstanding. For the project to be registered as part of the process of registering carbon projects within the country, you are required to submit a benefit sharing plan that will be reviewed by not only the minister but also by the Ministry of Environment and Water. How can we best design a carbon project for clean cooking using ethanol as the fuel for the transition in such a manner that all parties, the ones I mentioned earlier, are incentivized to sustain the transition? Our role today here is to give you what is some of the best practices, how are some of the carbon finance used in the ecosystem, and then we can have a discussion as to how do we think as the members of the public here today in Kampala or those online, how can we look towards scaling clean cooking. And I hope the online audience, we are really keen to also hear your views on how can we scale this. There are a number of components that usually goes towards using the carbon finance. I'll just give the case of what has been happening in a number of carbon projects and what is potentially going to be the case here as you're looking at ethanol stoves. But more importantly, we're keen to see how can you as a stakeholder support in terms of ideation in how can we leverage carbon finance to support the transition. The regulations are very, very clear. Please go check Regulation 18 on the benefit sharing plan. It's very, very clear. What others have been trying to do in leveraging carbon finance to enhance the growth of a particular carbon project is as follows. There are usually three main approaches. One approach is whereby the project developer is using carbon finance to subsidize the price of the stove. At the end of the session, I'll allow the FAMCO to come and talk about their project, the stove, and all the numbers associated with it. But in most of the clean cooking carbon projects, the carbon finance is often used to subsidize the price of the stove because, like I mentioned, you're looking at adoption and utilization. If the stove is not affordable to the end user or the targeted community, then the adoption will not make much sense. If the fuel as well is not affordable, sustainably affordable to the end users as well, there will be no meaningful transition. So some of the people using carbon finance often look at subsidizing the cost of the device. Others leverage what you call pay-go, that is the payments with installments. I'm keen to see if the other such players also doing the same with the ethanol stoves. I know for e-cooking, that has been a case that has been deployed. How are we looking at spending some of the money? It's very important for us to make sure and see, even as we are selling the stoves, how are we able to monitor the usage? So there's what we call the digital monitoring reporting verification system, and we mentioned that we shall see, can a stove have a meter, the sensor? If the answer is no, then we are going to the case of the sales records and whatnot. Yes? And we know that sales, some of these, we call them ETR receipts, they tend to fade. So of course things like making sure they're scanned and stored somewhere will very well be very important. How do we maintain a pay-go platform to make sure that if you are selling 10,000 stoves to customers who are paying in bits and pieces, how do we maintain such a platform? There's a cost implication. How do we make sure we support the marketing and distribution? I mentioned earlier that part of the work we'll be doing with the different implementing partners is to support in coming up the carbon finance model that will integrate the business model and the carbon finance model to see how much of this carbon finance can go towards supporting the capital expenditure of the stoves as well as the operating expenditure of the stoves, because we need adoption and we need utilization. The capex, the capital expenditure, by subsidizing it will only help us in the adoption. But how do we make sure people are always using the ethanol stoves? Can we subsidize the fuel? Can we have a rebate mechanism whereby the more fuel you are using, some of that is given back to you as the end users? Those are some of the things we'll be discussing with the implementing partners, and the discussion will be tied mostly largely to the carbon financial models that we shall be sharing with them. Now, I know some of these numbers might be very clear, and that's why I want to again stress, go to the QR code, label project documents, When you go to the drive folder, you'll see VPA bioethanol. Click this PowerPoint presentation and come to slide number 45. I know this is not very legible. I'm sorry for that. But please, on your table, there's a QR code labeled project documents. Look for this form, labeled project documents. Use your phone to scan. You'll go to a Google Drive folder. In the Drive folder, there's a folder labeled VPA bioethanol. Click this PowerPoint presentation. Go to slide 45. Now, I'm going to be very cautious in these numbers. These numbers are based on a different bioethanol stove and over different parameters. And I think in the morning, we talked about the efficiency of devices. The more efficient a device is, it then means it's using less fuel, correct? And therefore, it means the displacement of emissions from the business as usual will be higher. So these ones we're looking at a store's efficiency of about 55%. Okay, the minimum required by the carbon standard is usually about 40%. Anything higher than that, well and good. If you can be 100% efficient, well and good as well. But of course, there's usually a cost to that. So this particular stove used for these numbers was about 55% efficient. And from those calculations, we are seeing that if it were to be deployed in a household of about 5 persons, displacing firewood, it could potentially generate about 1.7 credits, potentially, okay, depending on the numbers we are using. Now, like I said earlier, you can have that particular stove, use the 3 different methodologies and come up with different emissions reduction, or if you like, the so-called carbon credits, because different methodologies have got different conservativeness in terms of the approach. For those of you who are wondering how do we come down to, say, carbon credits, if I didn't mention this earlier, for every 1 ton of these gases that you're able to quantify and say you've removed, 1 ton of these gases is giving you 1 carbon credit, okay? 1 ton removed gives you 1 carbon credit. I hope that point is clear. It's 1:1. So the more efficient your stove is, and the more the displacement you're having, you're getting more carbon credits. That one is very clear. We also did something similar for a potential stove that could be used at the institutional level, just again to see if a stove, an ethanol stove, is providing meals for about 200 learners, what are some of the carbon credits again. The key message I want to take away from this is this. You might have a case whereby one stove company says their stove is giving us 1 credit, another is saying 2 credits. Before you criticize the one who's saying 1 for stealing, understand that the number of credits being generated is dependent on the efficiency and displacement. I'll be very practical. I've not stayed in Uganda for long, but is the household size in one district to the next the same or similar? Some are 4, 5, some are 6, 5, 2, correct? So you can imagine the amount of firewood used to prepare meals for a household of 6 people is more than, let's say, 2 people. And if both houses get the same stove, do you expect the displacement to be the same? No. So therefore the credits will also be different, because how much are you displacing? And that's why we are always saying we must know which house got the stove, and when you're doing the selling in the baseline, to know how much firewood are they using and how many people are in the household. Because the credits being generated per stove will vary from one house to the next, most likely, because household sizes are different. In Kampala, in Gulu, in Mbale, wherever it is, even within Kampala, there are some are just 1 person per house, yeah, for their own choice. Others are 5 for their own choice, right? So the displacement will also be very, very different. That's what I'm saying. Before you start judging a developer, just get to know the numbers behind it. Are we together? I hope I'm making sense, right? Yeah, so 3 different methodologies are going to be applicable. It depends, are we putting a sensor or not? If you're putting a sensor, things are very simple. But if you have to go by the way of looking at sales or whatever, It's not simple, it's more complicated, but to still give us the same results. Are you together? Because we have to go with the realities on the ground. Some stoves can have sensors, some stoves might not have sensors. I'll want to stop there for now and pause for questions and comments. Yes.
I have now. I've been in the industry for quite some time, and I don't know how did you come to the figure 1.8? Because ethanol stores generally are supposed to have 2 tons per annum. Number one. Number two. Then how do you calculate? How do you come to the decision whether the baseline fuel is it charcoal? Is it firewood? Is it how do you come to that decision? And then how do you calculate the emissions that are deserved to a certain technology? In this case, ethanol.
Thank you. Back there.
Thank you very much. The question I had is, how is the efficiency of the stove determined? In other words, is there a certain threshold of efficiency whereby you say below this, the stove is not efficient? And maybe the other question is, maybe this is not for you, but could you be knowing the price of 1 carbon credit that it generates? Thank you.
Thank you. Any other question? Okay. Let me start bottom up. That's the philosophy where I come from. So prices. Price of clean cooking credits vary year to year because carbon markets is what you call a commodities market. Somebody sneezes, something happens to the prices, literally. So when we're doing our modeling, if you're looking at the credits being sold in the voluntary carbon market, whereby you're getting your credits, you're just selling to people who are coming to buy, we model at between $4 and $10 per credit. And remember, 1 credit is 1 ton of greenhouse gases that have been removed, yeah, verifiably. So usually model between 4 and 10. When you're coming to compliance market, that is Article 6 or Corsia, model for anything between 15 and 22, again, depending on the off-taker. But again, as I've said, it's a commodities market. Prices fluctuate. The highest price seen in clean cooking was by a project in Kenya, EcoSafi, which was about $35. There's never ever been any other project getting that. There are many factors why they go $35, but those are the different nuances. And of course, one of the ambition for the ministry to see how many of these projects can get to the compliance market so that you can get better prices. And that's why I say one of the advantages now, having somebody supporting in those negotiations. I'm not making promises, but I'm just saying the ambitions, what we really want to achieve. But yes, prices fluctuate. Lastly, one of the feedback that has been going to the carbon standards and to the buyers of the credits is this. If stoves have gone to the extra mile of putting these digital MRV systems that can verify the authenticity of these credits, then can you, as the buyers of these credits, pay for the premium price because I've gone an extra mile of putting these sensors to ensure verifiability? Can you go the extra mile? The EcoSafi project actually has a sensor. The cook stove is it's an updraft cook stove using pellets, but they're still able to have those sensors, and that's why, because they could verify, then they're able to get that price. So prices matter on a number of factors. Which market, to whom are you selling, co-benefits as well. Yeah, so there's no one clear answer, but for this program, of course, the intention is the best price possible. Efficiency. You have to take your stove to an authorized accredited body to do a thermal efficiency test. We call them control cooking tests and kitchen performance tests. We compare the amount of energy required to cook, let's say, the staple food of Uganda by firewood, and now with your stove, and then you see the efficiency. There's also water boiling test, how much energy is used to boil water with your ethanol in comparison to firewood. And then there's also the food. So if you're looking at food for 5 people with firewood, how much energy, then compared to yours. Energy, time, etc. So there's a very specific scientific test done, and it can only be done by accredited institutions. And for the institutions or the suppliers, partners looking to work with the government, that is one of the requirements. And it's very clear that for the carbon standards, the minimum is 40%. Yeah, because firewood, usually if you're using 3-stone firewood, efficiency is about 15%. So at least 40%, you're doing something well. Yeah, so, but of course, we'll be seeing what is the efficiency from Farmco's stove today. But the more efficient you are, the better it is for the numbers, okay? So keep that in mind. Now, coming to the questions on carbon calculations and the baseline fuel, how do you come up why is the ER far less? One, I mentioned on the efficiency, that's one of the reasons. And more importantly, in this new dispensation of these clean cooking projects, there are extra subtractions introduced. One of the subtractions, remember I mentioned, is what are the emissions attached to the manufacturing of the stove. In the PowerPoint presentation, you'll see something labeled embodied emission, to mean emissions for the manufacturing of that. So if you don't have the amount of emissions for the manufacturing of the stove, the default given is 0.017 tons of CO2e per device, multiplied by the number of devices. Yeah, the things are changing. Yes, all the 3 key methodologies are using that default factor. So it's either we come up, you measure from the factory level, or you use the default one, and that's the first subtraction we are having, the embodied emissions.
You slipped in that one. That was not there before.
Yeah, it literally came from December of last year.
Yeah. So now what is the methodology of doing those tests for the embodied?
So the manufacturer knows the amount of emissions when they're manufacturing the stove. Because you know there's scope 1, scope 2, scope 3 emissions. How you calculate, you take the activity data. For example, if they're using electricity, multiply by the emission factor for the electricity. I don't know where it was manufactured from, so it depends from which country, so you use the grid emission factor. But if you don't know those values, or the manufacturer can't provide the values, the default values are given that for every device, it's 0.017 tons of CO2e as the embodied emission per device. We subtract. Another factor that is also going to affect your price, especially if you're using the clear methodology, is what you call the Hawthorne's effect. What is the Hawthorne's effect? There's a study done that says when people know they're being monitored, they behave differently. So if people know they're being monitored for clean cooking, they behave unusually different from when they're not being monitored. And because of that, the intensity for clean cooking has to be moderated. So we multiply that by 0.9 to say they're just behaving unusually because they know they're being monitored. Ordinarily, they won't behave that way. I know you're going to ask me why.
No, but what if they're behaving abnormally, not using the technology? Then now you're subtracting even more.
Yeah, you see, I understand, but now for those last 2 methodologies, they're very keen to try and be as conservative as possible. Some houses will always just behave normally, but others will behave extra cautiously knowing they're being monitored, especially institutions, because you know the public institutions. So that's some of the subtractions that have been added, and then the other subtractions added will be the ones for the transport emissions. Where are you taking when you're transporting the fuel from the storage to the end user? So those small subtractions are now bringing down the carbon credits. And then lastly, I know many developers prior to 2024, there's this thing we call the fraction of non-renewable biomass. How much tree cover is being replenished compared to what's being deforested. A number of them are using 0.8, 80%. But the FNRB for Uganda has been revised to a default about 0.4. So if you used to get 10 credits per stove back then, it's literally half now. Because the argument being made is that over the years, many countries have worked towards reforestation to counter deforestation from clean cooking. Number two, let's say you're trying to do the stove in give me a district, just any district's name. Mbale district, let's say. You're trying to do the stoves in Mbale district. And there's what you call a Red Plus project happening in Mbale that is already trying to restore the deforestation. And you're doing the clean cooking to combat deforestation. You're likely to get far less credits as well because the problem, forest cover, is becoming a renewable biomass and not non-renewable. Because clean cooking is targeting deforestation from trees to fuel stoves. So if you're doing it in a district that has a very comprehensive reforestation agenda, your fraction of non-renewable biomass might also be affected. Not to say you should do, but that is the science. So that's why I was very keen to say, get to have the data of where you're looking to do the stove, and then we do those numbers on a company by company basis. But that's how now they're looking to enhance that extra level of integrity. So in other words, you're bearing the consequence of some misbehavior done by others in the past, but I think it's not too bad. There are ways in which we can still always make sure that we get the fair amount of credits. So lastly, remember, we can get less credits but still sell at a premium price because of all these co-benefits we are talking about. But I understand the frustration is shared across developers that the methodologies are going to chop some numbers. Chop.
Sorry. Now, are you okay? Because this is almost science to me. Are you guys going to assist us to calculate all this?
Yes, in fact, literally, you bring the stoves, sell the stoves, the rest, Christmas and I will support you, literally. That's why you're having this program, yeah? To do the carbon accounting, yes. Yeah, so that's part of the intervention. That's what I'm saying. If you can't calculate, come and be part of this program. If not, you sort yourself. Yeah, that's why we are here, yeah.
Thank you very much. There's something that always baffles me. On the forestry side, we are saying there's deforestation, the forest cover is reducing, the trees are reducing, the carbon sinks have reduced. So for us on the forestry side, we're saying there's no tree cover, it's reducing. And indeed, the facts show that the trees are not there and they're reducing. Then now, when you come to this side and you're applying the fraction of non-renewable biomass, you're saying that trees are, the biomass is renewable and it's renewing itself. I feel like those are two very contradicting statements in the same field, and at what point do they interact? Yeah, because I feel like, on one hand, we want to force it to be renewable, yet the reality is the tree cover is reducing. So how do we deal with those two? Thanks.
Yeah, so like I said, there's those default numbers given by UNFCCC. The alternative usually is developer is asked to do your own calculations. It is possible, it's allowed, but of course not. There's the cost implication of that calculation.
Then we come and derive our value, and indeed our value is higher. The market will say we are not being conservative enough. Actually, ideally, the market expects us to say, since the Ugandan value is 38%, let's be ambitious and conservative to put it lower than that. Yet in reality, what we think is actually that value should be higher because the trees are not there. Yeah.
That's again, it's a case of because getting the credits generated is easy, but who's going to buy them? The people with those comments, those sentiments. That's the harsh reality. The easier part, not easy, but The part usually is, can a country come up with its own baseline study, and of course the FNRB. But there's a cost implication and the time. It will take quite a long time just to do those assessments. And if a developer really wants to get moving, then using the default values is encouraged. Now the tricky bit is this. Once you start a project with a particular FNRV value, then it can't be adjusted upwards.
Yes, Charles. Of course, mine is just simply a rejoinder, briefly to some worries of Pharmaco. You know, Pharmaco is, and I want to thank you for the good job so far already you're doing. First and foremost, one of the worries when he talks about FNRB, I think we are also in plans, who knows, to have our own for Uganda, so that we don't keep on relying on UNFCCC. So that one will be, is part of what will be handled. So it shouldn't be much more of a worry. But again, during the design of our own project, then again, I think the issue was, the carbon credit is the trading at very low price. Then these co-benefits, once we design this project with all these, ideally we get a premium of our carbon credits. Thank you.
Thanks. And yeah, there's a question back there. And as she gets the microphone also, so it's quite clear that the numbers are not high. And that's why we say that if you are an implementer and let's say your capacity is to sell, let's say 5,000 stoves, it's not enough. That's why we are really encouraging, can we aggregate people? So as we do it as one project, by the end of the day, we know what is Pharmaco bringing, what is energy bringing in terms of the numbers. And the MRV systems are there to make sure we know the contribution of each company to that aggregated pool. And then the ministry is saying it's covering this other cost of carbon accounting. There are fees to having a project registered. There are fees to getting the project audited. There are all there are quite a bit of number of fees that can go even as high as $100,000 for a typical project. That to a single company, it may not be worth for the investment. But if we aggregate Pharmaco and the others, then we can also be able to leverage that economies of scale. And that's what the ministry is keen to do. And then number two is when you know the credits are being generated. Yes, Pharmaco is a big company, but the government of Uganda is bigger. So when it comes to negotiations of price, I think the ministers are better leverage because this is a policy. It's a policy for the so a number of factors we will use to see, yes, we might get few credits, but how can we still get better money? Yes, so how, and then I come back to you. Yes?
Thank you. I just wanted to know how long it takes to get these credits after the verification process. Thank you.
Very good question. So microphone here as I respond. So let's start with once the project has been registered. So let's say hypothetically speaking, the project has been registered on the 1st of July. And let's say hypothetically speaking, there are 100,000 stoves distributed and in use, hypothetically speaking. So we have to monitor for at least 1 year. We can do it 1 year or 2 years, but at least 1 to 2 years of implementation, so as the credits are being generated from the monitoring. And then let's say we are doing it in 1 year. So 12 months of monitoring, and then on the 13th month, we start what you call the verification process, which will take about 2 months to be done. So that means that's 14 months from starting, post-registration, and then on the 15th month, the credits are issued. Now, let's say for $10, I'll give it $5. So the question, are you in need of the money? Yes, then this is a discount. So it's the typical market behavior. If you want advance cash, here you have it, but not what you'll be getting at actual issuance. But to answer your question, from registration, assuming all those stores are already in circulation and being used, I'll count 15 months before now credits have been issued to you, then now you can start transacting. So the faster we can move, the better, because we have to monitor the devices. And if in the first month we only have 20 devices, and then the second month we have 1,000 devices, for that month we're only getting credits for those 20 devices, assuming they're being used. So it will always be on what has actually been used. So either way, we must ensure large-scale adoption and wholesale 100% utilization of whatever has been adopted. Those two things must work. In many cases, you'll see in what you call the project design document, somebody says you're going to generate 1 million credits from the stoves per annum. But when you come to the data, it shows they've only gotten 200,000. Why? Because they didn't sell enough and not enough was utilized. Because what you state now is not what you get. You get what was actually implemented and utilized. So let's keep that in mind as well. There's projection, we call it ex ante, and then there's ex post after now the issuance. So we always have to make sure that if you're targeting 100,000 households, let's make sure 100,000 households are utilizing every single day. Otherwise, we'll be very disappointed. Yeah.
I just, this issue of pre-financing you just mentioned, that where you can get credits at a reduced price. Now, what if you come and you are the one who is pre-financing me, and you say that you sell 50,000 stoves, for instance, and I pre-finance you that upfront, and then I oversell or I undersell? What is the scenario there? Then secondly, another question is, can you explain to us in more detail, because it looks like there are two types of carbon, there are two types of pricing systems that you've mentioned here. There is something you mentioned, COSIA or something like that, compliance market or something. And then there's the another one, which is a lower price. You're talking about $4 to $10, and the other one is about $15 to $22. And these are two different types of credit. What can you tell us why they are different in that price and what makes them different?
Okay, so to the first question on offtake agreements, so we come to what we're calling a term sheet. So, so let's say CRISPR's Investments is going to invest in Farmco, and in the term sheet says, I'm going to give you enough money for 50,000 stoves manufacture and distribution, and you'll pay me back by carbon credits at this price. So the term sheet usually indicates how am I going to be sweeping the credits? Am I going to be taking all the 100% of the credits from year one until I get certified or not? So those are usually bilaterals between the investor and you. A consequence as well as to what happens when you don't meet the targets. If in most cases, if you've got other carbon projects, usually then the investor will say, I'll take from other projects. If not then, and things are really, really bad, you'll have to sell the stores which you said you bought but you couldn't sell because of the term sheet. So it depends if you agree on the term sheets. So it's usually a bilateral, but usually it's usually stipulated there. Sometimes the investor might want actual cash or cash plus credits or just credits. So it usually depends. And in those cases, usually we have to go to another layer of legal and commercial structures, whereby we call it a special purpose vehicle, whereby the credits won't come to you directly. It will come to another company that it will hold the credits and the money until when the investor is paid back, again, as per the term sheets. Because, I mean, if they comes to you and then you refuse to pay, the investor is, let's say, somewhere in Europe, they can't come here and look for you in. So in most cases, it will be a special purpose vehicle, and the carbon register will be informed that these credits are contained here based on these term sheets, etc., etc. So, and it's a very, very, very common. Most of these big players, that's how they usually raise money for such projects. Yeah. That's why you're saying, come work here. Yeah. And that's what you're saying, because, the reality is this, and it's good to also be in Kenya. Many ministries come up with policies that are announced, printed in booklets, kept in shelves. But this ministry is saying, we did that, but now we want to help in achieving what was put in those policies. as I've said, there's no other ministry in the entire republic that is supporting clean cooking to this level. There's none. That is the reality. Going the level of creating POA structures and VPAs, inviting private sector, it's not there. It's not there. It's a fast. It's really a fast. So that to me is a positive signal. It's a positive signal, and that's why I say we really need to appreciate what the ministry is doing. It's really a fast. Yeah, and I think even you asked and say that usually it's the private sector designing projects. I've never seen a minister or government doing a POA. So it's really the enabling environment that the ministry is trying to do to scale clean cooking across different fuels. To care for different investors like yourselves who are coming into Uganda to support initiatives. So it's really a fast. Yes.
CDM project, especially the one with the Koreans. In that CDM project, so it was designed and they transferred it to Article 6.4. But in that project, they are, it's the Ghanaian government that owns is the CME, I think. The Ministry of Energy is the CME. And then they're able to aggregate these, what we have, like, for instance, the UNAC members. They have aggregated them. However, the difference, again, where ours is more advanced is it's a single fuel. It is local biomass cook stoves. However, as we are looking at a number of multi-fuel approach, so I think that's a first for us. But I learned a lot from what Ghana is doing, and I think that's why their clean cooking sector is really gaining a lot of traction, because there's a lot of government involvement and government interest to make sure that the private sector can play and participate in the market. Yeah.
Okay, so it's still a fast. Yeah, and now on the questions on the different kinds of markets, there are in principle two kinds of markets. There's a voluntary carbon market, where today you do a project, you don't need to do what we call a corresponding adjustment. You're just doing a project, you'll find someone who wants to offset from the global north, you sell them your credits, and the story ends there. So usually it's a bilateral conversation between you and the buyer. The other one is not called the compliance market, whereby there are companies who approach the government in the global north to support them in buying high credible credits from the global south. So in this case, let's say companies in Switzerland wanted to get credits from the global south, but with guarantees. So the government of Switzerland then comes to the government of Uganda and says, can we have this bilateral whereby our private sector companies can buy verifiable credits from companies in Uganda? And we as government ask as a guarantee, and if I read there's no bad manners between the players, okay? So that is now what's called the compliance market, which then means the credits being generated by the private companies in Uganda cannot be accounted within Uganda's NDC if they're going to be sold to companies under the arrangement between government of Uganda and Switzerland, okay? Because every government has a commitment to fight climate action. But if you're generating credits that will then be sold to another government for other private companies, you can't account them in your NDCs. You transfer them from your accounting to their accounting. And that's what Ghana has done with Switzerland. Kenya is trying to do the same thing. I know the same thing is trying to be done with the government of Uganda. So that the people like Switzerland, Korea, Singapore, they're looking to have those frameworks with governments within the continent. So we cannot account them. And because of that extra layer of integrity, the prices tend to be a bit better. So we call that the Article 6 framework. Yeah. Then we have got these airlines. Yeah, you'll be surprised to learn that Uganda Airlines might be part of a framework called the carbon offsetting for the aviation industry, whereby the aviation industry feels that they're doing quite a bit when it comes to the airline companies believe that because of the kind of things they're doing there, especially when they're doing an international flights, forget about the local flights, international flights, Kampala to beyond the region, it will be considered international. The amount of emissions is quite significant. Yeah. Because they have to offset. I know, for example, Kenya Airways buy credits as expensive as $50 per ton because they want to keep on using the London routes. And you're using the London Air, and there you are just depositing your fumes. You have to offset, and you have to buy that particular price from authorized carbon offsets projects. So there's also a possibility whereby credits from this project could be used to be selling to airline companies. And of course, CORSIA is a specific regulation that has to also make sure it's in place, everything is in place. The typical pricing there is from $20 and above because there's an extra layer of verification and validation there as well. So the more stringent the regulations, the prices tend to also be higher and higher. So that's the reality. So for us, the hope is that we look at the best market possible. Where do you sell your credits? It could be those kind of frameworks. In the VCM, we'd say over the counter, literally auctions. 2 years ago, there was an auction in Nairobi where guys from the Middle East came and bought credits from the region, the oil and gas companies. They just came and they were hustling. They're starting at $2, $3, all the way to $6. So it can also be an auction. Remember, it's a commodities market. So all those market mechanisms come to play. But of course, the purpose for this project is to make sure we get the best price possible.
The compliance market to deal now. Ugandan government deals with whichever, New Zealand government or Switzerland or something like that. Shouldn't that be the way?
Yes, but again, remember, we have what you call a carbon budget. How much can the government of Uganda sell as these credits? There's clean cooking in the other sectors. Of course, clean cooking is the most vibrant. That's the ambition. But if you're all of you generate 100 million credits per annum, I'm not sure we can sell all of them. So there are also those considerations, but yes, that is the thinking, and that's where the Ministry of Environment and Water is also supporting this initiative to make sure everything is done in place. The gold standard is having taken conversations with the ministry to make sure, again, things are also in place. That enabling environment, so you don't have the scenarios like across the border, is what really the ministry is keen. I hope you're all together. Yeah, and that's why, again, for the technical staff, we'll be having those separate conversations with those who are willing to come on board, so you have all those more nitty-gritty commercial, legal, and technical conversations. And of course, calculations, that's where now we are coming in. Yours is to have a very robust stuff, distribute it, follow the guidelines. Us is now to help in the accounting. Yes.
Sorry. This is very complex, and we are happy that you'll be there to see us through all this. Now, then, at the end of the day, what is it going to cost Pharmaco to pay?
I think, let me help you. You see, things are getting sweeter and sweeter and sweeter. You see, that is why Pharmaco is already excited and is like, please, can I join today? Please calm down. We are designing, all right? We are in the kitchen cooking. And what we are cooking is visible. The aroma is coming out, right? And what I can say, these are the conversations that we are going to have. Today we are presenting it to you. So whoever expresses the interest to join, then we shall go into further iniquity, which we cannot finalize from you, of course, right? But yes, we are saying you will be able to be taken into other technical conversations beyond here of how this will look like, right? I see my colleagues of pellets, they are uncomfortable now. They are thinking of how they are going to, yours is coming in the next few hours. From now, it's the same conversation. Just like I said, the 6 value chains are being considered for this conversation. No one is being left out. Even we have got just participants who are here. They are not into the sector. No, this is the time. Please, get into the manufacturing sector of either ethanol, you know, get somewhere and be there, right? The other issue I think was on why can't the government now take over of this discussion? But it has already taken over the discussion, right? That's where we are designing this program of activities, right? And that's why we are consulting you on the same. We will continue still because as you may have seen from program management, if you have seen it from the first presentation, the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development is taking lead, right? So all the conversations will be done by the Ministry of Energy on your behalf. I think this deserves a round of applause. Thank you so much.
Thank you. If there are any more questions or concerns, please make sure you put them in the form or in the online one. And we are left with just two more small segments. Is on the monitoring plan. I think I mentioned.
Sorry, as we wait for some questions, I understand there are some members who joined us when we had our breakfast. Feel free to jump to get a cup of coffee, a snack, and you join us because it is there. As we continue just having this conversation. And we have another conversation in the afternoon on the biomass. Please keep here. Don't go. Keep here so that you also listen into that conversation. Thank you so much.
So we mentioned that there are two opportunities. Either we're looking at a case whereby we can put a meter on a stove, or there's no case of a meter, we're looking at the sales record. So depending on the approach, will then depend on which methodology you're going to be using. This particular methodology is called metered and measured energy cooking devices, will only be applicable where we can put a meter or a sensor that can assess the energy consumption for cooking. If not, there's another methodology, it's called the TPD Tech. Again, that one is for directly applicable for where we're not having a meter, and therefore we're talking about the matters to do with the sales record. Same thing with the clear methodology. All in all, for the companies that we shall be part of this engagement, we shall look at your stove and then provide the necessary guidelines and the monitoring reporting verification framework that must be utilized for the purpose of this program. So again, the specifics will be handled on a case-by-case basis. The key thing is just to make sure that the stores, you have the right of the ownership of the carbon credits. We can do an efficiency test that is above 40%. But of course, as I mentioned, the Uganda National Bureau of Standards will also be giving its guidelines for the different stores, just to make sure that we are providing household and institutions top tier sort of products. Okay. Now, any question on that before we have the last section on how are we going to look at continuous input and grievance redress mechanisms? Any question? Microphone?
On the DMRV, the digital monitoring, reporting, and verification, because for ethanol, for the ethanol technology, mainly the way you can record fuel consumption is through sales. Now, how do you intend to do that? Do you have you designed an app, or because it has to be through an app? Yeah. What is the way forward there? Or if the existing companies participating have their own app, what happens? Will there be an API where you can integrate them or something?
Thank you. This is where I'll use the word himself, the Chief Technology Officer from Vast Carbon is here. I want to give you an opportunity to respond to that. Any other question or comment?
Yeah, thank you very much. So as matter as DMRV, there's of course being logged at the sales point, and if you look at bioethanol, you'd be able to track how much has been dispensed if you're dispensing it from a terminal. So that is what will need to be metered so that we can tell very accurately how much has actually gone for purposes of consumption. So every time there's a refill, that's what will be logged. If you already have a digital metering capability and you already have installed that, then we are creating a gateway that will allow you, rather an API interface that will allow you to stream that data to the national platform, And then all of those will be collated and used for the calculations. So there'll be those two where you could get support in deploying metering technology, or if already metered, you could have the streaming of that data coming to the national platform.
So what security, once my data comes, all my retailers, my customers, and when that data comes, when we API link it with you, what security is?
That's a very good question, because what we're saying is that we don't need to know the consumer. We just need to be able to tell the unique serial number of the device itself. So we're not streaming consumer information, but information around the consumption itself as opposed to the consumer. So what you're getting and what is coming in is data that is significant or useful for purposes of calculation, but not personal identifiable information. That can sit within your infrastructure.
Together. And again, that is something we'll be doing, and with the ministry, you are just to make sure that your device is ready for any sort of such interactions. Any other question or comment? So winding up with this particular component on how do we intend to be registering your views and comments in the continuity of the project. So we'll be collecting views in two different stages. Right now, we are currently collecting views to see how best can we improve the project design. We're not saying we have all the answers, and that's why we're doing a stakeholder consultation to see how can we address the different nuances. I like the comment earlier from about how can we support one particular community in Basoga community to go back into sugarcane farming. That's why we're really doing the stakeholder consultation. How we intend to keep on collecting your views, like I've mentioned again, I'm just reiterating, is on your table, you'll see two forms. There's one form labeled feedback form, a QR code. A QR code labeled feedback form. So you can scan, get the particular link, keep on giving us feedbacks on how can we improve the program design, the project design for bioethanol, for institutional and household, and you shall keep on receiving these comments for the next 30 days. Once the program for bioethanol has been established, I don't know how many of you have been able to go to the Clean Cooking Unit's website to see there's a very, very well established website again. So we'll have a particular page whereby moving forward for the ethanol component, there'll be a place within which if you are an end user and you got a store from Pharmaco, for example, or anybody else, they're not able to respond to your issues, you can also always reach out back to the ministry, because as the coordinating managing entity, it's their responsibility to make sure that these stores are functioning and end user concerns are addressed, and where the suppliers cannot do so, the ministry can always be able to intervene and hold people to account. But in the meantime, for this particular project, we are keeping on getting feedback from this particular QR code. But if you are here as well in the room, please make sure you can give us the written feedbacks. You can give us your name, your contact details or not, it's up to you, but what's really important are those feedback. Any question on that? Any question on how we're looking to address such challenges and issues? Now, as I conclude, I want to prompt Mohammed to get ready to take us through his stores, because you're almost coming to the end of today's session. And just to mention about the upcoming consultations, like I mentioned that there's one happening here in the afternoon from 2 p.m. You're looking at improved biomass cooking, which covers firewood, pellets, etc. Yes, you can still get carbon credits from using firewood. And if you want to know how and more, I'll not tell you now. See you at 2 p.m. I'll tell you in the afternoon. It's very much possible, but I'll tell you how in the afternoon. So as, again, just to reemphasize that the ministry is not excluding any investor or any developer. If you want to do LPG, you want to do electric, you want to do firewood, all those things are possible, but we have different sessions for that. For that one, we are having it in the afternoon. For LPG, we'll be doing it again here next week on Tuesday. It's a full day engagement on Tuesday. And then for those who have an interest in biogas, we'll be going to Mbarara for that particular engagement. But of course, it's going to be hybrid. You're always welcome to join. Is there any question pertaining to that? Please give us the feedback and comments. There was tea, you can give us feedback on the tea if it was okay, the air condition, don't talk about the audio. Yeah, but yeah, give us any feedback you want, but I will be very much pleased. Are we okay? Any question now? To wind up, we have if you go back to the PowerPoint presentation I've given you in the project documents folder, the email addresses you can also keep on expressing your interest, comments, just keep on giving us the feedback. I want to close by giving this opportunity to one interested ethanol developer who has got something in place for households. I want them to take the mic for the next 5 minutes. It's 10 minutes to 1. So like 5 minutes, tell us about the stove, price points, fuel, sources, etc. And then the same way I subjected myself to public comments and scrutiny, you'll be ready for the same. So with that ado, I want to welcome Mohammed from Pharmaco to talk about the bioethanol stove they have presented here today. And please feel free to ask him any question. Price points, selling points, source of ethanol, etc., including waste management, device lifespan, all those questions. I'm sure he has the answers, but yes. And as it's getting there, comms informs that we need to take a group photo. We need to take a group photo. Once it's done, I'll then invite back the ministry for closing formalities. Otherwise, it was a pleasure in leading this convening. Over to you, Bwana Mohammed.
Sana. I'm not used to holding a mic. Hello all, I'm Mohammed again. My name is Mohammed Kadhi, General Manager, Pharmaco Industries Limited. We have our ethanol stove here. This is a single burner stove, which will also be coming in a double burner. And this is a stove that has been developed after a lot of research into the ethanol market, observing what are the positives and the negatives in various different ethanol stoves in the market. There are about 9 or 10 different stoves globally in the market right now. So, what is so special about the stove? But before I come to the stove, let me start with the fuel. Pharmaco is a company. We are a 10,000 liter per day ethanol distillery. We are based in Western Uganda, and we source our feedstock mainly from cassava, maize, and we also get sugarcane molasses from the sugar factories within the region. So we are what you call a multiple feedstock distillery, where we produce the ethanol. Now, the ethanol that we produce specifically will be used for ethanol cooking, and in the future we are planning to expand. We are to move into anhydrous ethanol, which Madam here mentioned on how you're going to develop. So basically, we are concentrating on ethanol as a cooking fuel, but in phase 2, we are going into anhydrous ethanol for blending. Now, this stove, this is the canister. This is where you pour in the fuel. Unfortunately, we are not allowed to come in with the fuel because of safety reasons, but the canister will take in a liter of fuel, 1 liter of fuel. Now, this 1 liter of fuel you can actually light it. Once it takes in a liter of fuel, it will burn continuously for about 5 hours. Now, 5 hours of cooking would be like, like it can take 2 days of cooking. But one of the unique aspects of this particular stove is that other ethanol stoves, when you put off the stove, what normally happens is that the ethanol still continues to evaporate. Now, with this stove, which is a very unique design, is that once you finished cooking, you seal the canister. Okay. Now, once you've sealed the canister, the fuel does not evaporate at all. So that even if you left the stove for a month and came back, you'll find the exact amount of fuel. So here we are selling to the customer value. All right. When you buy ethanol, for which a liter is 4,000 shillings, you fill it and you go home, come back, you'll still find your value of your 4,000 shillings. So, and that saving, we have done tests with different various stoves, as that we found that once you cook and you seal the stove immediately, because this is a silicone rubber, this can take heat up to almost 300 degrees. So even when you just immediately after cooking, you seal it and it seals completely. What we've noticed that this 1 liter with other ethanol stoves would take about 4 days. This would actually last you a whole week because you are not there's no fuel evaporating. So I don't know how that is going to come in there, that in savings. So the stove right now has been tested. One of the criteria for participating in this program is that the stoves have to be tested. There are 2 testing centers in East and Central Africa which are recognized globally. And I'm proud to say one is here in Uganda, that is Creek. And Creek have tested this stove to the level of 61% efficiency. Now, for you to participate in this program, the stove has to be 40%. So we are way, way above the efficiency, at 61%. So, and again, that's why I was asking the questions on the value of the credit, or is it on efficiency and also other issues. So the fuel will be sold at 4,000 shillings a liter, and we estimate that a stove would be consuming about 10 liters a month. All right. So if you compare that with the consumption of charcoal, this is very, very much cheaper, very much cheaper. Then our mode of distribution would be, first we are focusing on Kampala, then the greater Kampala metropolitan area. We'll focus on it. We make sure that we have efficient well distribution, that where we buy, whereby if we sell a stove to you, you should not walk more than half a kilometer, that's 500 meters, to buy your fuel. It will be available in selected retail outlets and selected petrol stations. We have already signed agreements with retail outlets. Now, as we speak, the MD of UECCC last week signed our contracts, so that now we are participating in the UECCC program. So within the UECCC program, the stoves are going to be subsidized at 40%. What I'm not sure is whether we can be allowed to participate in the carbon credit because we are already participating in the UECCC, which is also another government program. So, so that is it. What we want to assure the customers is that the product is going to be available door to door, shop to shop, and will be out there to look after your interests. We are going to have a customer care center that you call us, a 24-hour call center that you can call us anytime that you have any issue. And yeah, that is all. I will take any questions now. Not from Daktari. Oh, yeah, the stove under this program, under the program, we are looking for the stove to be under 100,000 shillings. Okay, under 100,000 shillings, yes. And then now with the carbon credits, it should be much cheaper. Yeah. The price of a fuel I mentioned was 4,000 shillings per liter. One thing that I would like to state here is that when we do the carbon credits, we will want to subsidize the stove only. Why? Because it will not be possible to subsidize the fuel because of the price of feedstocks keep on fluctuating. So you'll find that the price of feedstock is higher this time, the price of the ethanol might be a bit high. It's just the way the petrol is right now. So it's the best thing to do is to be able to subsidize the stove to make it as cheap as possible to get it to the people, and then ensure that we distribute the product where the people are so that they can get the product when they need it. Thank you very much. Yes? But I would like to meet the gentleman with the farm. The sugar, yes, we'd be very interested to meet you.
Are we good? Yes? Are we all good? Can I bring my work to an end or a close, and I invite back the ministry? Any question, concerns, please put them in the forms, and the forms will be collected. Asanteni sana, and thank you for your time. Sorry, there's a question here.
It's a submission, I don't know, but I wonder the government will answer this. According to the information I'm getting from the parliament right now, this is Kenneth Lukwago Anderson. He says, State House to spend 14 billion shillings to buy firewood and charcoal next financial year. This is on the in the parliament right now, and the same Jew is responding to it. So I don't know whether the government is doing things contrary. Is the State House part of this Uganda? The government officials, please. It is on the parliament. It is in the budget now. 14 billion shillings.
If I can quickly respond to that. Yeah. There are people at State House, not so? So what will they use? Don't you want them to also make muchomo? Or you want to be the only one to enjoy it? There are people who live there, so firewood and charcoal is used. Who doesn't use firewood and charcoal? Okay. When you go to the villages, what do you use?
But he concluded by asking, how much are they spending on what mitigation?
We are looking at two things, yeah? And even our transition is very clear. When we look at the transition, we recognize and appreciate that we cannot have a switch and have everybody switching to electricity and ethanol overnight tomorrow. It's impossible. So we are being realistic and pragmatic and saying it's going to be a transition. So for now, let people use the firewood and charcoal. But instead of using 50 sacks of charcoal with an efficient cook stove, that consumption will reduce to even 10 sacks of charcoal. There's nothing wrong with using firewood and charcoal. I myself use charcoal. In fact, the muchomo, that one, don't give me on gas, give me on charcoal. Nothing beats that. Yeah, so we need to be realistic in recognizing that these fuels are being used, and we use them today, and there's no problem with using them. The only issue is the intensity of use is causing deforestation, and we're using inefficient technologies that are producing that smoke that is damaging our eyes. That's why we are also designing, in the afternoon, we are going to design a program on which is going to use firewood and charcoal. Yeah? We are now looking at efficient cook stoves, but very efficient, that can then significantly reduce the amount of firewood and charcoal that is used. I hope that answers your question. An addition?
Justin. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nelson, and I run a non-profit called Grievance. We create visual communications for companies that promote clean cooking. I like the gentleman's question and how Justin has also responded to it. And you know, as we are promoting clean cooking, we should also know how to live in reality to some extent. But my question or my worry right now is that if Parliament is raising such a budget for using such high amounts of biomass. My concern would be how can we monitor the trend to see if what were they using in the last financial year? Has the budget increased or it has reduced? Probably the staff has increased, but then we can also be able to look at the trends even if the staff has increased. My worry is that to some extent, some of these government entities, they like to raise budgets, for some reasons. But at least if we hear something like that, CCU, I could task you that, what can we do to monitor these numbers? Are they reducing? Or what is the State House using to cook in the first place? And then we can take it on from there, and then we see how we can bring them on board. I'm very sure that most of the people, for example, if you go to most ministries, some people, they are just finding out about clean cooking right now. So these are some of the things that I would like to see the government, CCU in particular, taking on. And of course, then we can be able to move to that next level that we want to see. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. We take note of that. And indeed, we are doing a lot. We have our First Lady, who also happens to be the Minister of Education and Sports, and recognizing that the Education Ministry is one of the highest, firewood-intensive institutions. So with that, we're having a number of interventions, and we want her to serve as our champion and ambassador because, again, to improve the sector, but also as our mama. And we've seen a similar approach has been taken. Even in Kenya, it is the First Lady who is championing clean cooking. In Tanzania, the Office of the Vice President was championing clean cooking. And when she became the president, she took that big mandate with her. And as you can see, there's a lot of activity and a lot of political will to support clean cooking. So we are doing a lot on the back end to, again, I'm sure they picked out the firewood and charcoal, but there should have been also a gas bill inside there and other alternatives. So there's a lot to unpack in terms of the population, what is the firewood and charcoal going to be used for, but we're doing a number of interventions. And also I'd like to pose that question to you why we can't have that switch immediately. We are growing the supply chains. We need to grow the supply chains. Today, if I'm using, you're seeing what's happening in India. Now there is no gas to cook with. What are people cooking? People are rioting, they are striking, and all these things. So as we're growing these new value chains, we want to ensure that we have sustainable supply, well-developed supply and distribution channels, so that we have continuous supply. We don't want to have a situation whereby tomorrow you've transitioned, yeah? I've been affected by it, and I am using electricity, then power goes, and I have nothing to use. Yeah? So I know, at least when I have a fallback position, it's there. So as we are growing our value chains, improving the supply, making sure the private sector is available, improving the affordability or the alternatives through carbon financing and other interventions, then we shall naturally see that shift. We shall see it move very quickly. It's how quickly we want to do it is what we are going to realize with this carbon financing. But also, and I say this as also, we need to also appreciate the value of the firewood and charcoal markets to our local economy. Do you know how much we avoid importing because we are using firewood and charcoal? Imagine, I am very happy that we are going to start producing our gas. Yeah? I think before this year comes to an end, we shall be getting gas from Kingfisher, and it is hoped that then we start to utilize our gas that is locally produced. But the advantage of firewood and charcoal is that is locally resourced. Some of you are even suppliers of that firewood and charcoal. Yeah? Your suppliers. So what happens to that income, that revenue, that Mama Gundi who is selling that firewood and charcoal? We need to plan for that person. As we look at these transitions, we need to make sure that they play a role in these transitions. And as we continuously use the firewood and charcoal, let's use the best practices. That involves planting the trees, ensuring that you have sustainably grown trees, then cutting the trees with the best practices, transporting them producing the charcoal according to standard. We have national standards for charcoal, by the way, yeah? And ensuring that then you use the most efficient cook stoves. That will ultimately reduce the demand for the charcoal, but also reduce the environmental burden that charcoal has when we use it for cooking. Yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Justin. And we are sorry to bring the biomass thing in ethanol, but biomass is cost-cutting. Charles Chiseka is my name. My background is biomass. I'm the secretary of BETA. BETA is Biomass Energy Efficient Technologies Association. What my colleague has brought out that is being read in Parliament, the Parliament of Uganda, that State House is spending is appropriating 14 billions on firewood and charcoal. I think it wouldn't have been the conversation by now. And this shows there's also a lot for us to do. Right now, we would have been talking about briquettes, either non-carbonized and carbonized in State House. That would have been the conversation. But it's quite worrying that we are talking about firewood. I don't know whether you people you grew up from villages. For me, where I grew up, my village is in Chotera. We used to have government forests. I don't know, 20 years down the road, when you move to those places, our forests are getting extinct just because we are cutting trees to provide firewood for government institutions. I'm not so far from the prison as an institution of government, but they fetch a lot of firewood is being used in this prison starting from Luzila, way and there. And the government, the State House you've mentioned, doesn't only mean the Entebbe or Nakasero. We have state lodges, they're all combined. Actually, for me, I've picked up a point that there's something we haven't done as practitioners. Maybe we need to reach out to these offices and we force them to switch. Someone said Parliament refused to come in the ghetto. The ghetto has gone to Parliament. People, if the political will hasn't done enough to change or to enter into clean cooking, please, people in clean cooking, let's do what it takes. Let's do what it takes. We start with these government institutions. There's no way how we are going to champion clean cooking in Uganda when State House is still using firewood. Seriously. Thank you so very much.
Thank you very much, Charles. I don't dispute what you're saying, but I'm also adding to submit and say you can do clean cooking even with firewood and charcoal. You can do clean cooking with firewood and charcoal, yeah? Now, if I planted my trees, if I had 10,000, or let's say I have 1 acre, yeah, of my trees, yeah? But from that acre, I only need 1 tree a year, yeah? And I cut down that tree. In fact, I don't even cut down the tree. Actually, the historical use of firewood, our grandparents, our ancestors were very, very wise people. We need to learn a lot from them. They used to clip branches. They wouldn't cut down trees. This heavy demand has actually come from institutions, as you rightly said. And why is it? They are not planting back the trees. If you plant back those trees, you will not have deforestation. Because you're growing. Actually, it's a matter of planning. You know you need this firewood, you need this wood. You need this wood for the electricity pole sector, you need this wood for timber, you need this wood for paper, you need it for whatever it is. Plant it back, just like you need food. You grow food. You don't wait for food to grow on its own. You plant for enough acreage, you plant the food, and it grows. So similarly, let's take this wood as our food because it feeds us. You cannot eat without the energy. Plant back. If what we were using was not causing deforestation, there would not be a problem. We wouldn't have a problem with firewood and charcoal. The only issue we have with firewood and charcoal is no matter how efficient the system, there'll still be that smoke that comes out that affects your health. But the deforestation issue can be sorted out. That's why in Europe, they use biomass. They actually plant trees and chop down, these are countries that have rain, for probably a few months of the year. But they grow their trees sustainably. They get
to represent all of us, to just give a vote of thanks in 1 or 2 sentences, not exceeding 1 minute. I think we have been having men wherever we have been going, except I think Mbale, but we can still give further chance to women. Is it okay we have an opportunity for women today? So, and I know Justine will also be happy when I mention that. So let's have one representative who is a female. Please, you vote for yourselves and you get one representative.
I don't want to speak, but the first person who came for this meeting happened to be a woman. Okay. So I'd like to invite her.
Okay, the first woman who came in.
The first person who happens to be a woman.
The first person who came in and is a woman. And give just in 1 2 seconds. Just come in front.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for coming. I'm here under Delagua. What Delagua does, it distributes cook stoves. So actually, I was here earlier because I thought that was the first session, but I was informed it's the next session. But anyway, I decided to stay. So I would like to thank the organizers, Ministry of Energy. Thank you very much for organizing this, and the presenter, Mr. Charles. It was very enlightening. Actually, this is one of my first, because we are not yet operational here. We are just joining the sector. We are currently in Rwanda, but expanding into Uganda. So I would like to thank the organizers for this. It was very enlightening and exciting, and I can't wait for the next session to actually understand more about the biomass, because that's where we fall. Yeah, thank you, and enjoy the afternoon.
Thank you so much. I want to believe that the objectives of this stakeholder engagement have been fulfilled. When we reached here, we clearly outlined the objectives of this stakeholder engagement. One of them was to present the POA structure, which I know now everyone understands the POA structure, right? Right? Number two, we also informed you of the DMRV that we are going to be using. Digital monitoring, reporting, and verification system that we are going to be using. I hope now you have an idea. We also wanted to discuss about the methodology. You now understand the methodology. We wanted to discuss about benefit sharing, but also discuss about the grievance escalations. And I now know that you also understand that component. We also wanted to pick information from you, because what is being designed is for you, right? So we want to design what really works for you. And I want to believe that that has been achieved as well in this session. That said and done, before I invite closing remarks from the representative of the commissioner, key to note, we are going to be here again talking about LPG. If you have an interest in LPG, but again, getting further information is also important on clean cooking, I want to encourage you to join us on Tuesday, 28th. We shall be in the same room, same hotel for this conversation. Then on 30th, that's going to be a Thursday, right? 30th, we are going to be in Imbarara, Western Uganda. And we are going to be talking about biogas. If you have interest in biogas, but also you want to understand more about carbon financing and the program, this is your time. Also join us in Imbarara, for further discussion. As they said, in the afternoon today, we are going to be discussing about biomass. The language is biomass afternoon. Please stay and listen in, right? But again, there is a QR code that is on your table where you can continue scanning and accessing further information about what we are talking about. Plus the form that you can lodge any question or complaint that you want to share with the team here. I encourage you to use those forms that are on your table. The clean cooking unit is open at the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development for any further engagements. So I also encourage you to come to the clean cooking unit for further discussions, right? But at this juncture, I see the representatives of UNAC are already in. I know they are ready for the next session. Let me now invite Justin to come and close the session. We go for lunch briefly. I think we should not exceed 45 minutes. Then we come back at exactly 2. We wanted to begin the second session on biomass. Justin, you're welcome. Close officially. Then we move to the next lunch, then next session. I think after your remarks, we shall get someone give us. Normally, after your remarks, we don't want any other person to speak. How shall we get a prayer for our food? So go ahead and pray for our food after your remarks. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tashobia, and to our consultants, Vast Carbon, for this very, very wonderful and very critical work that you're doing to design a program of activities for a national framework on clean cooking. And we appreciate the work that's going on, and also I'd like to thank our stakeholders in the biofuel sector for coming here and providing your feedback and supporting us and guiding us in the design of this intervention. This is a very important intervention. We are dealing with a market that keeps changing all the time. So we want to do the design of this intervention as quickly as possible, and recognizing that it's we need the carbon financing to enable us make the upfront cost of these clean cooking alternatives lower, and also, where possible, support in the affordability of the cleaner fuels. So thank you so much for the feedback that you've given to us, for the heartfelt conversations that you've also, and also, feedback you've given to us. As the Ministry of Energy, we take a stand to promote an integrated array of clean cooking solutions. So we are dealing with about 6 value chains. We are starting with firewood and charcoal. That's the first value chain. We are also looking at the alternative biomass forms, that is briquettes and pellets. We are also promoting biogas for those who have the animals and the poultry, to mention but a few. We're also promoting the use of ethanol for cooking. We are promoting the use of LPG, and also the use of electricity. So it's within those 6 value chains that we are designing this integrated approach, recognizing that we can't have everybody switch today. However, gradually, as we make the technology more affordable, more accessible, and more reliable, we shall then have an automatic transition. So we hope we can walk this journey with you, our suppliers, our private sector players, and our consumers, to realize that dream of ours. So with that, I'd like to thank you once again and close this session on biofuels. Thank you very much. Okay, and now for the prayer. Sure, we don't have a volunteer. Okay, let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this meal that you've prepared for us. We thank you for the hands that prepared it, and for those that provided for it, and also for our guests, but also for this very important critical discussion, and that is how we can realize a clean cooking transition for all Ugandans. So we pray that this meal provides nutrition and sanctity, and may you bless it as we have it. In Jesus' name we prayed. Amen.
let's